Claude Monet's Meule, or Grainstack, was painted in 1891, and it belongs to a momentous series of paintings of some 25 works that Monet worked upon over the winter of 1890 and into 1891, in anticipation of an exhibition held in May of 1891 at his dealer, Paul Durand-Ruel's gallery in Paris. It depicts the field behind Monet's house at Giverny. He literally stepped out of his door and into a pasture and faced west, looking towards the hills on the far bank of the River Seine. Monet's idea in tackling such an extensive and ambitious project was that each painting should represent a particular moment in time. He said about another series painting that sometimes his sittings, his moments in front of the motif, would last as little as 7 minutes. His sensation was always of paramount importance, sensation over perception in a way. He wanted to represent the innocent eye, to see nature unfiltered and to create a sense of atmosphere, the light effects that plays between the artist and the subject itself. In a certain way, for Monet, the subject was of secondary importance. The moment of day represented in the present painting is sunset. You can see the sun disappearing behind the distant hills. The composition itself is broadly divided, horizontally speaking, into these 3 stripes: the foreground field, the middle ground, the escarpment, with the rooftops of the nearby hamlet, and then above the radiant sky reflecting the sun as it disappears. This moment in Monet's art saw an introduction of a new style, a new technique. He'd written to Berthe Morisot, his painter colleague, just a couple of years before, how he was fighting against his inclination for bravura brushstroke, and he realized he had to work into something more subtle, more nuanced. Meule, the present painting, is a wonderful example of this new departure in Monet's painting technique. Smaller brushstrokes, a weft of color, of nuance, of gentle inflection. It's understood that these paintings were started, of course, en plein air, in front of the motif, in the open air, but then they were worked upon later in the studio because of the sophistication of their surface in several passages on the painting, which in a way reflects Monet's philosophy at this time, as he sought to make something more permanent of the Impressionist experiment and something that would have an element of universality to it, a timelessness. Gustave Geoffroy, a writer and critic and contemporary of the Impressionist movement, gave a rather lovely description of the exhibition of Grainstacks in 1891, when he wrote, "At the close of the day, the stacks glow like heaps of gems. Their sides split and light up. These red glowing grainstacks throw lengthening shadows that are strewn with emeralds. Later still, under an orange and red sky, darkness envelops the grainstacks, which have begun to glow like hearth fires." Most of the some 25 works in the Grainstack series are today housed in museums across the world. Very few remain in private hands. The present painting was actually acquired by the Chicago hotel owner Potter Palmer directly from the artist in 1891. So it was one of the very first to enter an American collection, and shows the early respect and adoration that the American collecting public had for Monet.